What's up, y'all? I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut. Thanks for coming back for yet another week. Now, this video here is a continuation of a series that I just put out. The first video was for all grass types, and it talked about the very first thing you should start doing as a consideration for springtime. This video here is a breakout for Centipede and St. Augustine lawns only, and I'm going to give you a lot more detail in here. Not really about pre-emergence, we covered that in the first video, but instead I'm going to talk about when to start fertilizing, how much fertilizer to put down, when to start mowing, when to start watering, all of those kind of things. And I'm going to give you a fun new way to predict when that time might be happening in your area. And this is a really long video and there's a lot of good tips in here, but in case you want to skip ahead to the ones that matter most to you, I'll give you all the timestamps right here. So inevitably, one of the first questions I get is, Alan, why no nitrogen fertilizer so early on? And then also, when can I start fertilizing? And we're going to talk about that and some of the trigger points that you can start looking for to understand when to do that. But I want you to first think with me, most of you that are watching this right now here in early spring, your St. Augustine and your Centipede are dormant. They're brown. They're just sitting there in winter slumber, just waiting on a few signals from Mother Nature before they get started. Now, up until this point, we've talked about soil temperatures and soil temperatures related to the fact that crabgrass will start to germinate, or the window for crabgrass germination eligibility opens as soil temps approach 55, and we're good there with our pre-emergent, which has a little potash in it, but no nitrogen. So why no nitrogen? I want you to think about something. I kind of look at different grasses as like MMA fighters. You have some grass types that are really like Nick and Nate Diaz. They have cardio, man. They like late into the rounds, they got plenty of gas left in the tank. They're just known for strong cardio. They don't tire out. Then you have other MMA fighters, I don't know, maybe like Brock Lesnar or most heavyweights really, that they might get 1.5 rounds and they gas out. They come out hard and strong and they just dominate everything, but there's really not much left if things go bad. They're not going to be able to weather a storm because they just burn out too quick. And that is what St. Augustine, and to a little bit lesser extent, Centipede are. They're those grasses that will come out hard and fierce and push, but as soon as they hit any kind of opposition that they weren't expecting or that's out of the ordinary, they're gassed out and they need a lot of recovery time between rounds before they can push them again. And that's one of the things that we have to be careful with early on with St. Augustinegrass and Centipede, are that we don't want to get the nitrogen flow, because what the nitrogen flow is going to do is stimulate shoot and root growth and all kinds of stolons to push, and the grass will start running because it realizes it's got only a little bit of time. Let me put up the growth calendar here for how warm season grass works. You can see that it's this big giant camel hump. Let me put up the cool season grass growth calendar just so you can look at that in contrast. You can see it's two camel humps. It's a spring and a fall to the growth spurts. But us here with warm season turf, and especially with our Centipede and our St. Augustine grass, we've got to get that slow ramp till we're raging in the summer, and then we ramp back down. So following that growth habit, what you don't want to do is cause St. Augustine grass to push as hard as it should be in the later months in the middle of the year when it's in the height of its growth curve. You want to let it come on slow. You want to let it come on methodically. You want to push it, but you don't want to push it too hard, too fast. And if you bomb the lawn with too much nitrogen too quick, what will happen is that grass will come out and it will push hard and it will start running, and then inevitably you're going to get a cold night. I'm going to tell you what, even you guys across Texas, Georgia, you'll get a freeze. You're going to get another frost. You are. And that is going to stunt that Centipede. It's going to stunt that St. Augustine, and it's going to gas out, and it's going to be kind of sitting there going, whoa. You know, now guys that sell fertilizer, they like that. Do I sell fertilizer? Yeah, I sell fertilizer. I mean, yeah, because if you bomb all that nitrogen in now, your grass starts growing crazy, and then you get a cold snap and it dies. The fertilizer's gone at this point. Now you're going to have to buy more and put more down. So do guys that sell fertilizer like that? Yeah, but I'm still going to tell you straight. I'm going to still tell you right. It's better to creep in slow. It's better to kind of let it kind of make its way. Don't push it too hard. So if it has to stop, it's only backing up a little bit. It's kind of chilling. Whoa, yeah, a little cold. All right. Slow. All right. Nice and warm again. But let me give you some triggers though, because I gave you the MMA fighter analogy. I want you to understand that your grass type is alpha, but because it's alpha, because alphas tend to offend if they get going too fast, you gotta kind of tie that alpha back a little bit. You gotta use some wisdom with an alpha, and you gotta kind of coddle them along a little bit, you might even say. Sorry if I'm getting a little, sometimes I get a little bit this way. This is more like podcast style here, but I think some of you guys kind of like it. I think that sometimes these analogies that I use can open up windows of truth and understanding for you. So long and the short of it is right now, put your pre-emergent down, but it's best to wait on the nitrogen. So when can you though? When can you start fertilizing? Because that's the other question people are going to ask with Centipede and St. Augustine is, when can I start fertilizing? So we talk a lot about soil temperatures, and soil temperatures do dictate a lot of things, especially when we're talking about new seeds germinating. But we want to look at soil temperatures a little differently for existing grass plants or existing plants in general, because they've already got an established root system. They've already got established, in this case, stolons and daughter plants and all kinds of things. So our grass is established, although it's dormant. We need to understand that it needs a little bit more to get itself going. In other words, you got this giant lawn, and again, our grass types are, most of that lawn or a lot of that lawn is connected because of the stolons. They weave all in and out, but a lot of them are connected back and kind of come from the same mother plant in a lot of cases. And so there's a lot of energy that needs to... So we got a lot of wind. I hope you're going to be able to hear me okay, but I want you to think about this lawn when it's dormant. Now this lawn doesn't go dormant, but your lawn, I'm working off the assumption here in the video that most of you watching this, your Centipede and your St. Augustine is currently dormant. And one thing you want to think about is when you see all these grass blades, these are not just individual plants. These are actually all interconnected in a lot of ways. So take a look here. This is a stolon, and these are nodes. This one was way down in there, but it's actually connected in a few different ways. Now I'm gonna go ahead and rip it out totally here. So you can see this is, what, like 2 or 3 feet long here? And this was creeping all through the grass. And so that's all interconnected. And this is just what I was able to get here. There were more shoots going off other areas. That's a whole nother plant there. But you can see this just continues creeping and moving. This is the business end of it, where it was still creeping and still moving across the top. But you can see that's a pretty large plant. There's a lot to that. And there are bunches and bunches of these all throughout there. So now imagine if these are all dormant. It takes a lot of energy to get that plant started up. It's not just one single little seed. There's a lot there. These are some big, beefy stolons here. And these stolons, they need a lot of energy from the sun to do what they do. I mean, look at all of that creeping and growing and moving. And so what I'm trying to illustrate here is when it comes to existing grass or existing plants, they don't just rely only on soil temperatures as their go time. They also need to rely on the amount of sunlight that they're getting, and they need to make sure there's enough sunlight available to sustain this type of aggressive growth. Soil temps are also important though, and so if you want to know, for St. Augustinegrass and Centipede, the soil temperatures are 60. Crossing 60, heading to 65, that is when St. Augustine and Centipede will start to wake up. And that's interesting because that correlates fairly well with the amount of daylight that these grass types need as well. And the amount of daylight that they like or that they want in order to really start running is 12 hours. Now I realize that you're not all in direct sun and you're not getting 100% direct sun. There's all kind of variables here, but I'm just giving you a basis here. Once the day length goes over 12 hours, it's like a trigger or a signal to these grass types to start their yearly growth run. So think of that lawn, it needs more power. Where does the lawn get power from? The lawn gets power from the sun. Literally, that's what plants do. They take their energy directly from the sun. That's the process of photosynthesis. So those grass plants are not only waiting for warmth in the soil and warmth in the air, they're actually waiting for the sunlight. So there's a really cool website that I want you to go to. It's called sunrise-sunset.org. Now, there's probably other websites that do this. I just happened to find this one. They got a nice, pretty sunset picture at the top that I thought was cool. Sunrise-sunset.org. So I typed in a suburb of Dallas, Addison, Texas, and you can see that currently their day length is just about 11 hours, and they're gaining a couple of minutes per day. So you can scroll down to the bottom and you can see how the days get longer as they wear on. Let's advance it and see where we hit that 12-hour mark. Looks like March 15th is when Addison, Texas gets a 12-hour day. Now let's go check out the soil temps in the Greencast tool and see if there's any correlation there. Look at that, approaching 60.
Now this is variable, and these are averages, so let's advance it a day or two, and you can see we are really coming up between that 60 to 65 degree mark. Right about on that March 15th, 16th, 17th time, right when we're over 12 hours of day length. That's a good indication that March 15th is a great time to start throwing down.
Now you say, Alan, okay, I'm not going to use these tools. I love what you're saying, bro. Thanks a lot. I'm not going to sit here and use these tools and figure it out. What can you help me with then? I'll tell you this. When you need to start mowing your St. Aug or your Centipede every 10 days in order to follow the 1/3 rule. The 1/3 rule means you never cut off more than 1/3 of the grass blade's length in a single mowing. That means if your St. Augustine grass is 6 inches tall, you can cut 2 inches off of that, and you will not have broken the 1/3 rule because 2/3 of that length will be left, which is 4 inches, and that's about perfect for St. Augustine grass. So if you can keep within that 1/3 rule, mowing every 10 days or more frequently than every 10 days, then you can go ahead and throw down some fertilizer. If you're mowing every 11 days or more, you want to hold off yet. You want to wait. You're just not getting enough growth. You're not getting enough speed out of that St. Augustine, and you don't want to push it too hard. Now, Centipede, you're very similar, except we're going to use a lot less nitrogen on you, but your start time can be the same. So both St. Augustine and Centipede, you can start the same time. Whenever you got to start mowing about every 10 days to follow that 1/3 rule, that's the time then that you can start with your fertilizer. Now, back to the growth curve. I don't want you to go out and bomb it hard with nitrogen. We're not going at a full pound, even though St. Augustine can take it. Centipede, you should always go 1/3 to 1/2 lower on the nitrogen than what I recommend for St. Augustine grass. And so a lot of times we can throw a pound of nitrogen at St. Augustine, even more, and it'll be fine, but we're not doing that now. In the early going, I want you to stay at 3/4 pounds of nitrogen or less. That means Centipede, you're gonna be somewhere at 1/2 or even 1/3 pound of nitrogen, somewhere in there. We wanna start it out slow. The other thing you wanna do is use an organic or a slow release, which if you look at a lot of synthetics, they're gonna be 50% slow release as well. But we like the organics because we're gonna add some carbon and some other things and stimulate microbes in the soil, which is also good to do early on in the year. So if you like Milorganite, I know there's a lot of Milorganite haters out there these days, but if you like Milorganite, that's a good one to start with because it's slow release. It's a 6% nitrogen product, so like 8 to 10 pounds per thousand will be a good start for you. Centipede, you could even do 6 pounds per thousand. Good start for you if you want to go down there. If you want to use X-Green, X-Green is an excellent first application of the year because it's 8% nitrogen and 8% potassium. And of course, as always, one of the great things about it is it's biochar that's had chickens poop on it. I always like to say that our biochar is the best because chickens poop on it, but everybody knows that chicken poop is a great natural fertilizer, tons of micronutrients in there, and that is the basis of all of the Carbon Earth products. But 818 X-Green has got that in really small prills, and it's also got some added potash in there, which is great to help the lawn coming out of winter dormancy. Not to make this too pitchy, but we are back in stock on the website of all the Carbon Earth products. Now, they've been branded a little bit differently this year. You can view a video that's on the website there that tells you why that is, but we have the 818, and it's the new stuff with the brand new formulation that does have the peptides included. Click the link in the description below. That'd be a great way to start out the year for your Centipede or your St. Aug. Now, let me give you guys a quick tip, and this is going to have something to do with a little bit extra pre-emergent protection because of the strange winter we've had where it did get going warmer earlier in a lot of cases. Some crabgrass or other stuff may have germinated underneath the ground before we got our applications. I mean, it just happens. There is no perfect year. As I said in the original video, this is a weather-driven business, and the weather always wins. We just got to do the best we can and hope for the best in the end. With that, though, if you need a little hedge of protection, if you want a little something extra, anytime in the spring, anytime, as long as the grass is actively growing, you can go get one of those purple label weed and feeds that's made for our grass types. What you're gonna have in there is the atrazine. I'll put some pictures up. I actually have a couple different products here that I found locally at Lowe's. They're from Sunnyland. These are the weed and feed products. I've used these. There's micros in there and all kinds of stuff. Now, there's gonna be nitrogen in there. That's fine. That's why you want to wait a little bit longer into spring. Don't do it early, but at some point, like in the middle of spring, just bam that in there. The reason for it is, again, I like the micros. The nitrogen's fine. I mean, I'm fine with that. But what I'm really looking for is that blanket of atrazine. Atrazine is an excellent post-emergent weed control, so it's going to help clean up any junk that's lingering out of winter, including Poa annua. It'll hit it'll get chickweed, it'll get any himbit that's lingering, even though it's going to die anyway. But there's a lot of things that it'll get. Florida pusley down here, hairy bittercress. It targets a lot of things. Atrazine's a cool weed control, but it also works with a residual for about 25 to 30 days or so as a pre-emergent. So what I'm saying is because this year's been strange, if you have Centipede or St. Augustine, take advantage. This is a specialty product and only be used on our grass types and then zoysia, and that's it. Put that down, follow the label. You'll get the extra N, you'll get the extra micros, but you'll get that atrazine that's kind of a nice reset button for any junk that escaped you during the winter, as well as will give you an additional 25 days. It will not interfere with the prodiamine. It actually has a completely different mode of action. So it literally is like a double up. I call that bulletproof whenever you do two of the same, type of application with different modes of action. We do that with fungicides a lot. So one of those things to think about, if you do want that extra protection, definitely do that. I'll be doing that on my lawn as well. I've already done it on my lawn because I'm year round here. So for me, it's a winter app, but for the rest of you that are coming out of dormancy here, you can do it pretty much anytime in the spring. Now be careful though, because the label on these products limits you to only 2 apps a year. I would rather you save one for the late fall or winter. So just do one perfectly targeted now in the spring and you'll be good to go. Now, another good thing that you can do anytime now, whether the lawn is dormant or not, is get in that humic acid, get in that aerate. And then once the lawn starts growing, you start fertilizing, that's when you want to apply the RGS, which has humic, fulvic, and the sea kelp. So that's all part of the biostimulant pack. You can start hammering that stuff in right away to get that soil kicked up, get the biology moving. It's going to help the roots to move deeper quicker. And that brings me to the next point. All of that stuff needs to be watered. If you haven't been watering, you need to start irrigating now. These grass types need 1.5 inches of water a week. If you're going to start watering, because it's been dry where you are, I think it's been wet over most of the country. Been a little dry here in Florida, but not too bad. But if you're crispy because you haven't been watering, don't just start banging it. You don't, because the water will run off. You need to kind of build that soil moisture up slowly. So hit it with a 1/2 inch today, wait a couple days, a 1/2 inch again, and then slowly bring it up to that 1.5 inches or a 1/2 inch of water every 3-4 days or so. I'll link below to the video I did on taking the tuna can challenge with either your manual sprinklers or your sprinkler system, your automatic system, that shows you a fun way to do that, to understand how much water you're putting down. Please definitely start your irrigation because the aerate especially, it's not going to work on dry ground. Nothing works on dry ground. Even a mechanical aerator will do nothing on dry ground. It won't pull cores. All of these things have to go down with water. If you're trying to loosen up the soil, you need to get some water packed in there and some soil moisture packed in there, which takes everything else in with it. Speaking of mowing, I want to go back to that. You don't have to mow your St. Augustine or your Centipede any lower. There's no like special scalping or anything like that we do. Just keep mowing like you normally do. Centipede, you should be somewhere around 2 to 3 inches. If you want to go a little higher, that's fine. But somewhere in 2.5 to 3 inches is probably just about right for Centipede. St. Augustinegrass, 4 inches plus, unless you have one of the, real low-grown cultivars. Most are going to have St. Augustinegrass that needs to be mowed at 4, especially if you have a stoloniferous base, a big mattress of stolons built up over years. Keep that puppy at 4 inches or higher. If you need to mow 1 notch lower just to knock off some dead tips before the winter heads on its way out, that's fine too, but no scalping or anything like that. And a lot of people ask, do we need to de-thatch these grass types? The answer is absolutely no. Remember earlier I talked about how these are big, a bunch of daughter plants all around, stolons, all connected back to a mother plant. You have big sections of lawn. Well, if you bring a de-thatcher through that, you're going to cut those stolons in half and you're going to cut off the daughters from their mother, and that's going to do enough damage to a lawn, especially coming out of winter. Because remember, we only have stolons here. We don't have any rhizomes like our sister zoysia and our brother Bermuda have. So if you cut off all of our stolons, you're going to basically be ripping in half all of the ability for our grass types to kind of get out for the year and start spreading. So we don't do that. So the key is, if you think you have a thatch problem with these grass types, is to start mowing more often. The sun will get in there and it'll melt that stuff away. Of course, there's products you can use. We have the de-thatch product. I don't want to get this too pitchy. But the idea with those is you need to start mowing more, and that goes back to mowing one more time. Please mow your lawn every 3 to 4 days this year. The more you mow, the healthier it will grow. Beat the 1/3 rule. Don't follow it. Beat it. Make that your priority this year, and I promise you, you're going to see a lot better results just by getting that mowing right every single week. Week in, week out, you can do it. A couple more quick ones. I don't want to make this too long, but if you're coming off large patch, especially with St. Augustine grass, large patch was really bad this year. I got some in a couple of spots in my lawn. You can still fertilize that nice 3/4 pound, 1/2 pound nitrogen coming out of the spring. That's coming into the spring. That is just fine. When you see things on university websites, they never say that nitrogen causes fungus. People in forums will say that or in comments, but they're just misinterpreting. What nitrogen can do, too much nitrogen can make disease manifest worse. And it goes back to what I said earlier. If you make your St. Augustine grass or your centipede start growing too fast, too early, young shoots will start to grow. It'll get hit with cold and it'll stunt. And then that leaves a lot of fresh, tender growth for the fungus to spread onto. So that's another reason not to fertilize too hard, too fast. But you still need to feed it. It's like if you get a cold or the flu, do we stop feeding you? No, we actually feed you more. Now, I'm not telling you to feed your grass more. I am telling you to feed your grass smart. Just like when you get a cold, you know, my mom used to give me electrolytes through Gatorade. I always got ice cream. I don't know why, maybe to settle my stomach, but I got things that were good for me. Got vitamins, you know, that kind of stuff. Terrible analogy, but you get the idea. When your grass is sick, you just need to give it micronutrients. Humic acid is really, really good for it. Low doses of nitrogen. We do need it to still grow because it still needs to be able to absorb sunlight, but we don't want to push it hard. So that 818 works just fine. So if you've had large patch, I'm not telling you not to fertilize. I'm just telling you not to bomb it hard, which is a part of my programs anyway. So if you follow the programs that I typically recommend, just keep moving slow and low. Now, you will want to put out fungicide though. Nothing to do with the nitrogen. You're going to want to put out fungicide because you have fungus in your lawn, because large patch, also called brown patch, if you're one of our turf type tall fescue friends or somewhere in the transition zone following us, it's the same exact Rhizoctonia. It's just called large patch when it's in Centipede and St Augustine, I think Centipede too. And it's called large patch when it's in cool season lawns. Same deal though, as you start your fertilizing early in the spring, that's the same time then, as you start your fertilizing and your mowing, that's about the same time then that you can go ahead and put your first fungicide down. And I recommend you get a couple down here in the spring. Got plenty of videos on that. That's a preventative rate. Hopefully then we can grow through it and we can have a disease-free season this year in 2020. Now, if you stayed this far through, you may be wondering, why did I lump Centipede and St Augustinegrass together? And the reason that I did that is because of their growth habit. I've talked a lot about this year about growth habits already, but the thing about it is our grass types spread by stolons. Stolons are essentially stems that creep across the top of the ground. Every couple inches, the stolon forms a node. The node will push roots down and it will push grass blades up. And that's how it takes ground. When it forms that plant there, that's called a daughter plant. The daughter plant came off the mother plant. And then and the stolon keeps going and it keeps putting down more daughter plants, keeps going, and it takes ground as it moves. That is an aggressive way for it to fill in. And that's why our grass types will fill in bare spots sometimes within days or a couple of weeks, especially during the rainy season at the height of the season when we're getting full sunlight and we're actually able to push it with some nitrogen. Now, Centipede is a slower grower and a slower shower, but it does have the same growth habit and you can take advantage of that. You just have to be patient with it. That's why we don't push it with as much nitrogen. We're gonna let it kind of hang back and conserve its energy. Although it's going to move slow and methodical. It's almost like if I look at St Augustine grass being the aggressive of the stoloniferous grasses and Centipede being the methodical, slower grower. Both are strong, both have strengths, and both use stolons. I would compare that to Bermuda, which is highly aggressive. It's stoloniferous and it's also rhizonomous. I would compare that then to Zoysia, which is stoloniferous and rhizonomous, but much slower than Bermuda. Same thing we have here, St. Augustine, stoloniferous and fast. Centipede, stoloniferous and a little bit slower. So they're alike in their growth habit, they're different in their growth rate, but one thing they do share is the ability to take most of the same herbicides, and that's why I put them together, because you can use the same weed controls on them. And if you're looking for a good weed control, I recommend the Image. It's the one here with the purple label for southern lawns. This is good for St. Augustine and Centipede for sure. It's got a really good stack of weeds that it does control. It can be used in a little bit cooler weather and work just fine. It's available at pretty much every big box store. You can get it in ready to use, ready to spray. You can get it in concentrates. So that's what I recommend you start using to spot spray weeds. Also, right about the same time you start mowing, go ahead and spot spray a few weeds that escape. And then if you use that atrazine weed and feed around that same time, you've got a pretty good strategy going there for weeds post and pre-emergent, along with that prodiamine backing you up. You got that second app coming in there sometime later in the spring. Should be pretty good to go for the spring and on your way to a nice green lawn this season.